Picture this, a scene not from a distant dystopian future, but from a world just around the corner. A dry, relentless wind sweeps across a cracked desert plain, a landscape scarred by a thirst it can no longer quench. The camera pans slowly over an abandoned city. The silence is heavy, broken only by the wind. We see sun-bleached streets, boarded-up windows, and empty pipes leading to rusted taps that haven't seen a drop in years. A school playground sits frozen in time, dust swirling around a faded slide where children's laughter once echoed. A lone firefighter, a symbol of hope in any other crisis, walks with a heavy gait past a hydrant. With practiced hands, he opens the valve, a final desperate check, but there is only a hollow cough of dust and air, not a single drop. The system has failed. Now, cut to another scene in the very same city. A luxury hotel fountain, an oasis of impossible extravagance, continues to run. Crystal clear water, sourced from deep private wells, dances in the golden hour light. While just beyond the ornate gates, the slums stand in silent, parched desperation. This jarring contrast is not fiction. It's not a movie set. It is the world unfolding right now, quietly, invisibly, but with a violence that fractures communities and deepens inequality. And this brings us to the hook, the alarming reality we can no longer ignore. By 2025, a date that is terrifyingly close, 2/3 of all humanity will experience severe water shortages at least once a year. This isn't a distant projection, it's the immediate future. And because of this, governments and intelligence agencies around the globe are already preparing for something that was once unthinkable: water wars. The next great global conflicts won't be fought over oil. They won't be fought over ideology or even territory in the traditional sense. They will be fought over the one fundamental resource that nobody, no city, no nation can live without. So the big question we're exploring today is both simple and utterly terrifying. When the world runs out of water, who survives? And more importantly, why? What systems, what power structures will make that decision? Because by the end of this video, you'll understand the full picture. First, the real reason water scarcity is exploding. It's not just climate change. It's a story of mismanagement, corporate control, and aging infrastructure. Second, we'll pinpoint the geopolitical hotspots where the first water-triggered conflicts are most likely to erupt, from the Nile to the Mekong. Third, we'll examine how this crisis will fundamentally reshape our world, redrawing borders, collapsing economies, and triggering mass migrations on an unprecedented scale. And finally, we'll expose the hidden systems of power and profit that are already deciding who gets water and who is left to die of thirst. This is the invisible architecture of survival, and that's the system we're decoding today on Decoding Point. Part 2. The Invisible Threat: Understanding Water Scarcity. Let's start with the silent enemy. Most people imagine water scarcity as a giant drought, a failed monsoon, a river running dry. But that's only half the story. Water scarcity happens when demand exceeds what nature can sustainably supply, even if rainfall looks normal. It's not just a climate problem, it's a population problem, a consumption problem, a mismanagement problem, and yes, increasingly, a geopolitical problem. Here's the quick stat that it's hardest. Over 4 billion people, more than half the world, face water stress at least 1 month per year, and nearly 2 billion live in regions where water supply is already collapsing. But because the taps still run in big cities, the crisis hides in plain sight. Think of it like a bank account. If you withdraw more than you deposit, you go bankrupt. Earth's water systems are going bankrupt. Groundwater is dropping. Rivers are shrinking. Rainfall is becoming unpredictable. Agriculture is gulping 70% of global freshwater. And yet, many developed cities still enjoy long showers, lawns, swimming pools, car washes, and fountains that never turn off. Water scarcity is invisible until it suddenly isn't. So let's go to the places where it's already visible. Places where the taps are running dry. current hotspots, where the taps are running dry. Across the globe, a handful of regions are on the front lines of the water crisis. They are the canaries in the coal mine, showing the rest of the world what happens when demand outstrips supply, and the climate begins to change in unpredictable ways. These are not distant future problems. They are happening right now, reshaping landscapes, economies, and the lives of millions. 1. The Middle East, the world's epicenter of water stress. From Saudi Arabia to Jordan to Iran, the Middle East is, by a significant margin, the driest and most water-scarce region on Earth. Here, water has always been precious, a source of life that has shaped civilizations for millennia. But today, the balance has been broken. Jordan, a nation that has welcomed millions of refugees, survives on one of the lowest per-person water supplies in the world. Its primary water source, the Jordan River, is a fraction of its former self, and the country is forced to ration water, with many households receiving it only once a week. To its south, Saudi Arabia once sat atop ancient underground aquifers, so massive that for a time it pursued a dream of food self-sufficiency, growing wheat in the desert. But this was fossil water, a non-renewable resource accumulated over thousands of years. After decades of intensive pumping, those aquifers are now nearly gone. The nation has pivoted to desalination, a costly, energy-intensive process that now provides over 70% of its drinking water, but creates its own environmental challenges. And Iran, the situation is a national tragedy. Its Great Lakes, like Lake Urmia, once the largest in the Middle East, are shrinking into barren salt flats. Its historic rivers, like the Zayandeh that flowed through Isfahan for centuries, are now often just ribbons of dust. The consequences are profound. Farmers whose families have worked the same land for generations are abandoning their fields and migrating to already overcrowded cities, fueling social tension. This entire region is a pressure cooker, a dangerous combination of overlapping crises. You're mixing explosive population growth with cities doubling in size, extremely low rainfall, which is becoming even more erratic, a deep over-reliance on finite groundwater sources, relentlessly rising temperatures that increase evaporation, and simmering political instability, where water scarcity becomes another trigger for conflict. Add the accelerating impacts of climate change, and it becomes a perfect storm, a warning of what's to come for other arid regions of the world. 1. Sub-Saharan Africa, the humanitarian crisis in motion. If the Middle East is a story of chronic scarcity meeting modernization, Sub-Saharan Africa is where climate change is directly fueling a humanitarian catastrophe. In the Horn of Africa, an unprecedented drought has seen 6 failed rainy seasons in a row. For millions of pastoralists and farmers, this is a death sentence for their way of life. This is not a coincidence or simply a bad spell of weather. This is climate change hitting its stride. Warmer ocean temperatures are disrupting the atmospheric patterns that have brought predictable rains to this region for centuries. In countries like Ethiopia, Somalia, and Kenya, the results have been devastating. Cattle, the primary source of wealth and culture for many communities, are dying in the thousands, leaving families with nothing. Children are forced to walk for hours to find water, which is often contaminated and drawn from muddy, hand-dug wells, robbing them of their health and their chance at an education. Crops are failing repeatedly, pushing more than 20 million people into severe food insecurity, on the brink of famine. And entire villages are being forced to migrate, abandoning their ancestral homes simply to survive, becoming climate refugees in their own countries. This crisis isn't confined to rural areas. South Africa sent shockwaves around the world when it nearly hit day zero in 2018. Cape Town, a major international city, announced that its taps would literally shut off. It was only averted by drastic last-minute conservation efforts. That was a wake-up call. Since then, dozens of other rapidly growing African cities are watching their water levels fall just as fast, squeezed by population booms, aging infrastructure, and the same unpredictable rainfall. 1. South America. The agricultural collapse nobody predicted. While Africa and the Middle East have long histories of water scarcity, South America is the new face of the crisis. A continent blessed with mighty rivers and the Amazon rainforest is now experiencing droughts on a scale that was once unimaginable. Brazil, Argentina, and Chile, agricultural powerhouses that form a breadbasket for the entire planet, are facing record-breaking droughts that are crippling their output. The Paraná River, a critical artery for trade in Brazil and Argentina, recently hit its lowest level in 77 years. The lack of water stranded barges, collapsed grain harvests, and sent shockwaves through global supply chains, spiking food prices thousands of miles away. To the west, Chile is suffering its longest and most severe drought in modern history, a mega drought now lasting more than a decade. It has devastated the country's valuable fruit and wine industries and led to strict water rationing in the capital, Santiago. This matters to everyone, no matter where you live, because global food prices are deeply and inextricably tied to water. The world's agricultural system is a complex, interconnected web. The chain reaction is simple and brutal. Less water means smaller harvests. Smaller harvests mean higher prices for basic commodities. And higher prices can fuel social and political instability everywhere. A drought in Brazil can mean more expensive food in Berlin or Beijing. The looming battleground. Water as a weapon. So far, we've seen the human cost of scarcity. We've witnessed communities struggling to find a single drop, but now we move to something darker, something that fundamentally changes the calculus of world politics. This is where water transcends being a resource and becomes a tool of power, a lever of control, a weapon, because where water is scarce, tension begins to simmer beneath the surface of diplomacy, and where tension builds, open conflict inevitably follows. The fault lines are already drawn, etched into the earth by the very rivers that give life. Let's look at the major flashpoints, the places where the next global conflicts may not be fought over oil or ideology, but over water. Flashpoint 1. The Nile River, a ticking time bomb. Egypt and Ethiopia, two of Africa's most populous nations, are caught in one of the most heated water standoffs on the planet. The dispute is rooted in geography and history. For millennia, Egypt has been sustained by the Nile's flow. Today, it depends on the river for over 90% of its fresh water. It is the nation's singular lifeline. But 85% of that water originates far upstream in the highlands of Ethiopia. And there, Ethiopia has built the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, the biggest hydropower project in Africa. For Addis Ababa, the dam is a symbol of national pride and economic liberation. Ethiopia sees development, electricity for 65 million people, and a pathway out of poverty. But downstream in Cairo, they don't see progress. Egypt sees an existential threat to its very existence. The rhetoric has been chillingly direct. Egyptian officials have openly said, all options are on the table. And more bluntly, water for us is life or death. That is not diplomatic language. It bypasses negotiation and speaks directly to the possibility of force. That is war language. The core of the dispute is the filling of the dam's massive reservoir. If Ethiopia fills it too quickly, especially during a drought year, Egypt could face a catastrophic reduction in river flow, hitting its agriculture, its electricity from the Aswan High Dam, and its drinking water supply. For over a decade, this single conflict has triggered emergency UN Security Council discussions with years of failed negotiations. escalated military threats and proxy maneuvers in the Horn of Africa, and destabilized the politics of an already volatile region. And intelligence analysts and geopolitical experts agree, the Nile remains one of the world's most likely sites for a future water war. Flashpoint 2, the Mekong, where quiet power plays begin. Half a world away, a different kind of water conflict is unfolding. Here, the power plays are quieter, but no less consequential. China controls the headwaters of the Mekong River and has built a cascade of more than 11 megadams. For the 60 million people in countries downstream, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and Laos, this is a terrifying reality. They allege these dams are being used to hoard water during the dry season, severely reducing flow when it's needed most. The results are devastating. Southeast Asia's largest lake, the Tonle Sap, is shrinking, its unique seasonal pulse disrupted. One of the world's most productive inland fisheries is seeing its fish populations collapsing. Millions of farmers who depend on the river's rhythm are struggling. And across the entire Mekong Delta, food security is declining. This is hydropolitics, where geopolitical power flows with the river. China has the ultimate leverage. It can turn the tap on or off. There are no bombs here. There are no armies massing at the border. Just dams. Concrete and steel controlled from a room hundreds of miles away. And in the 21st century, a dam can be more powerful and more coercive than an army. Flashpoint 3. India and Pakistan, a nuclear region, one river system. Perhaps the most dangerous water flashpoint on Earth lies here, where India and Pakistan, two nuclear-armed rivals, share the waters of the Indus River system. A remarkable feat of diplomacy, the Indus Waters Treaty, has kept the peace over these waters since 1960. It has survived 3 full-scale wars and countless skirmishes. But now, the treaty is facing a threat it was never designed for: catastrophic climate change. The Himalayan glaciers that feed the Indus, the region's water towers, are melting faster than ever. At the same time, demand for water is rising exponentially due to population growth and industrialization, and temperatures are soaring, increasing evaporation and straining already scarce supplies. In this high-stakes environment, every dam India builds on the western rivers, even those permitted by the treaty, creates deep-seated fear in downstream Pakistan, which worries India could one day choke its water supply. And every accusation Pakistan makes, every call for international arbitration, creates political tension and nationalist backlash in India. The trust that underpinned the treaty is eroding. This is a nuclear region with a long and bloody history of conflict. And as the glaciers shrink and the rivers diminish, water is rapidly becoming one of the most likely triggers for the next and perhaps final confrontation. Beyond borders, the global ripple effect water scarcity doesn't stay local. It spreads like shockwaves. Let's break down the ripple effects. 1. Food prices. Skyrocket agriculture consumes 70% of the world's fresh water. Less water, smaller harvests, higher food prices. This affects grains, vegetables, livestock, dairy, everything. Droughts in Brazil. Soybean prices rise in India. Droughts in the US. Wheat prices rise in Africa. Water scarcity becomes a global economic problem. 1. Mass migration begins when water disappears. People disappear too. Families leave farms. Villages empty out. Millions move into cities or across borders. Europe today sees migration from Africa partly driven by water scarcity. South Asian cities face rural migration due to groundwater collapse. Water creates refugees. 1. Humanitarian crisis and instability. Shortages trigger protests, riots, political collapse, resource hoarding. Governments fall when taps run dry. History repeats this often. The Arab Spring had food and water stress as underlying catalysts, and as scarcity deepens, instability grows. Part 3. Pathways to Peace, Solutions and Your Role. After all this, you may wonder, is there any hope? Yes, but only if we act smart and fast. Here are the solutions shaping the future. 1. Desalination, turning the ocean into a resource. Countries like Israel, Saudi Arabia, and UAE are leading. Modern desalination plants now produce massive amounts of drinking water. The challenge is energy cost. But renewable-powered desalination is rising. This can change everything. 1. Wastewater recycling. Every drop. Count Singapore is a global model. Its new water system recycles wastewater into ultra-clean drinking water. Los Angeles and parts of Australia are adopting similar systems. This creates new water out of old water. 1. Smart irrigation. Feeding the world efficiently. Drip irrigation, soil sensors, satellite monitoring. These reduce agricultural water consumption dramatically. Remember, if agriculture becomes efficient, the world becomes stable. #1. Individual action. Your role matters. Long showers, wasted food, leaky taps. Daily habits matter more than people think. Small changes from millions of people create massive impact. Supporting sustainable companies, voting for responsible water policies, and conserving water at home all help. Because in the end, water security is not just a government issue, it is a humanity issue. So, here's the truth. The real battle is not between nations, it's between consumption and reality. If we treat water like an infinite resource, we lose. If we treat it like life itself, because it is, we survive. The water wars are not inevitable, but they are possible. The choice is still ours. So let me leave you with one question. When the world starts fighting for water, what side of history will you stand on? Will you be a bystander? Or part of the generation that chose to change? And now, I want to hear from you. But what do you think? Do you agree? Or do you see it differently? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Today we uncovered why nations are preparing for wars they can't afford, and why water, not oil, may define the next global conflict. But this story connects to an even bigger pattern about scarcity, global shocks, and survival, because the same forces driving water tension are also reshaping global markets, including precious metals. We explored that deeper in our earlier video, Silver's Explosive Rally, Early Signs of the Next Commodity Bubble. Watch it next, and the connections will surprise you.